Welcome to Mountain Ridge. I'm so glad that you're joining us, whether you're in person or online. If this is your first time to Mountain Ridge, my name is Cory. I'm one of the pastors. And if you're a guest with us today, whether online or in person, we want to connect with you. And so if you're in person, I want to encourage you, drop by the Connect Center. We have a gift that we'd love to give you as a thank you for being a part of our service. If you're online, you can just simply go to mountainridge.org/online connect. But either way, know today that we want to connect with you. Today, we're going to be continuing in the series that we began a couple of weeks ago called After I Do. And I know I've talked to a few of you that have said, you're talking about marriage and I'm not married. Hey, I just want to let you in today. Today, what we're going to talk about, if you have a relationship of any kind, it applies to you. It's not just about marriage, but it's about all relationships that we have. So let me start off with a question. What are you fighting for? Think about that for just a moment. What is it that you are fighting for? Maybe it's for followers on social media. You know, you want to ramp up the amount of people that are watching your TikToks, your dances, whatever it is. I don't know, but maybe it's followers. Maybe it's on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is that you're on. Maybe you're fighting for followers. You want to be noticed. You want to know that people like what you have to say or like what you have to do. You're fighting for followers. Maybe for you, you're fighting for a career. You're doing everything that you possibly can just to work your way up the ladder, to get that next promotion, that next big position. And so you're jockeying for it. You're fighting every single day. Everything that you think about, everything that you do is about that promotion or that position within your company. Maybe you're fighting for time to play video games. Or maybe it's board games, whatever it is, whatever kind of game you like, but you're fighting for your time because you know how important that is to you, that you want to give into that. Because for whatever reason, it makes you feel a certain way, and so you're fighting for time to be able to play whatever game it is that you want to play. I mean, you've adjusted your schedule just so that you can get the amount of time that it's going to take to accomplish the next skill or task or level, whatever it is within that game. And so maybe for you, it's a game that you're playing. Maybe for you, it's kind of like me. I love sports. And so it's figuring out the schedule just right with what the wife wants to do and where the kids need to go. And how do I make sure that I get to watch the game that I've set out to watch without having to do what Pastor Brett does and record it, even though I know who won or lost, and then go back and watch it later. I can't do that. I mean, good for him, but I can't do that. I got to watch it live in the moment. I don't want people to spoil it for me. So I got to fight for that time, even the time to play, because I still love to play the game of baseball. And so what do? I play old man softball. Yeah. Exactly. I have to fight for that time because everything else in my life tells me that that's not important or that I should do something else. And so I have to fight for that time. Or I have to fight for the relationships that are in my life. Now, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your best friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, or fictitious friend, I don't know. But you have to fight for those. I remember what it was like when Tracy and I first started dating. Now, we were in high school, so go back with me. But in high school, I had to fight for that time to be with her because I wanted to get to know her. I wanted to build a relationship, hopefully a relationship that would take us somewhere. And with school and work and sports and all the things that were fighting for my time, I had to carve out special moments and occasions just for us. But something happened later in our life. After she said I do, and I said I do at the altar, I didn't seem to fight as much for that relationship. It was interesting because within the first year of our marriage, my wife would tell you it was the worst year of our marriage ever. And I know that sounds weird because you're thinking, well, it's the honeymoon and it's this great experience and all these firsts and all these new things that we get to do as a couple. Yeah, that sounds great. But I had kind of put her on the back burner because I had thought in my mind that I got the girl of my dreams. I did everything possible to make sure that she was mine. And then I just kind of left her to the side. And I began to pursue my dream, or at least what I thought was my dream. I mean, we've all fought for something because we want to win. We want to succeed. We want to get whatever the prize is at the end of the battle. We want it. I mean, even, and maybe you remember this and maybe you don't, even Mike Tyson was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that he won if it meant he bit off somebody's ear. Some of you remember that, right? I mean, he wanted to win so badly that he would do it at whatever the cost, even if it meant to possibly run his career. And so he was willing to fight for it. One of the things that we've talked about through this entire series is building a marriage on Christ. It builds your best marriage. But now again, some of you would say, well, that marriage thing doesn't apply to me because I'm not married. So why don't you go ahead and substitute that word? Building a relationship on Christ builds your best relationships, no matter what kind of relationship it is. And we've showed this diagram every single week, and it's a triangle. And for most of us, within the context of our relationships, we have this idea that if we will pursue each other with everything that we have, it will make the best relationships possible. Can I tell you that's a myth? And the reason it's a myth is because, let's be honest, you, me, we're selfish. And no matter how much we want to pursue the other person, myself still gets in the way. It didn't matter how much I wanted to make sure that Tracy was mine for the rest of our life. Once I got her, other things got in the way. I became selfish. I pursued what I thought I wanted or what I needed or what was going to be best for our marriage, our future, our relationship. And what we've talked about week in and week out is that if you and I will pursue Jesus, if we will make Jesus our all, if we will go all in pursuing him with everything that we have, every ounce of our being, what we learn to do is we learn to not be selfish. And so then it makes our relationships with others better. And especially within the context of the marriage relationship as husband and his wife. If we will pursue Jesus, pursue him with everything that we are, then what do I begin to do? I begin to love my wife the way that Jesus loves the church. I begin to lay down my life and sacrifice my life the way Jesus did for the church. And the same is true for her. And again, that same thing is true in all relationship contexts. So again, let me ask you this question. What is it that you're fighting for? Because I promise you, at the end of the day, every one of us are fighting. And I know that old saying, I'm a lover, not a fighter. Show me if you're a lover that you didn't have to fight for what it is that you love. You had to fight for that. Because everything within this world is trying to take that away from you. And so this idea of, I'm a lover. I'm gentle, I'm kind, I'm gracious. Me too, but I'm a fighter deep inside of me. There's a warrior within me that is fighting for something every single day. Every day of my life is a battle. From the moment that I open my eyes to when my feet hit the floor, it's a fight. And maybe that same thing's true for you. And so if you're a guy here today, I want to speak to you. I want to speak directly to you. And I don't want to speak to you in the terms of, I'm going to tear you down and how bad you are, because I'm not. What I want to speak to you today is what God has innately put within inside of you and within me and who he wants us to be. And that it's okay for us to be the way that we are. It's okay for us to fight as long as what we're fighting for is worth fighting for. Because again, for some of us, and even for myself, at times in my life, I have fought for the wrong things. I fought for things that I thought would make me better. Because it was about me. It wasn't really about my wife or my family or my friends or even my job. It was about me and about me being seen this way and that way and about receiving this and that. So again, what is it that you're fighting for? If you have your Bibles this morning, I want us to turn to Colossians chapter 3. And Colossians is a letter that Paul wrote. And who is Paul? Paul is a guy that in the beginning of his life fought against Jesus. I mean, he fought against him with every ounce of his being. He wanted nothing to do with Jesus, so much so that he was right there in the thick of things when Jesus was to be taken to the cross. He was right there in the thick of things when those who were followers of Christ were put to death. He was in the thick of it. And he was a guy that thought he had his life figured out and that he was fighting for the right things and moving in the right direction. But what he discovered is that he was fighting for the wrong things, things that had no purpose, no value, no meaning. And he had this incredible encounter with Jesus that changed his life. And so from that, he wrote 13 of the 27 books that we find in the New Testament. 13 of them. And some of those were letters that he wrote to the church. And this one specifically is a letter that he wrote to the church. And it was a letter that he wrote to encourage, to challenge, and to remind us. So again, we're going to be in Colossians chapter 3, and we're going to start off in verse 12. And it says this, starting in verse 12, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." I already failed. All week I failed. Last night my wife asked me, what is the message on tomorrow that you're going to be talking about? I said, about fighting. She's like, great, you did a good job this week. You've done a really good job. I mean, as I read this, therefore as God's chosen people, those who are followers of Christ, those who call themselves Jesus followers, those who have given their life, surrendered themselves over to Jesus and said, Jesus, be the Lord of my life, because on my own, I don't show very good compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, or patience. I don't. But look at what he says in verse 13. It says, bear with each other and forgive one another if you have any grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Again, I've already failed. Verse 14, and over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. And be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the God, the Father, through him. Again, as we read that and as we think about that, every one of us in this room could say, I failed this week. I failed when it came to that which was most important to me, the relationships that I value the most, the ones that I hold up and say, this is it for me. I failed. And so when it comes to fighting, again, I ask that question, and I hope this question will just sit with you this morning. What is it that you're fighting for? Because the first thing that I discover that Paul is saying to you and I is this: never, ever give up. Never give up. And I know that culture tells us that when we get tired, when we get worn out, when we feel like that we've been taken advantage of, mistreated, to just simply throw in the towel and to give up. And I don't want you to misunderstand me. I know there are relationships that we need to let go. I know what it is. I know what it is to be in a relationship where you're physically abused, and that's not right. And that's not a relationship that I wanted to be in. And it's not a relationship that I'm in. But in the relationships that matter, the ones that are most important to you, I would challenge you to never, ever give up. Go back to what he said there in verse 13. It says, bear with each other and forgive one another if you have any grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. See, giving up is not forgiving. Giving up is simply moving on and saying, I want to forget about it. I don't want to be reminded of this or defined by this. I don't want to be scarred by this. Can we be honest? We all have scars. And that's okay. We all have scars in parts of our lives that we're ashamed of, that we're embarrassed by, and that's okay. But again, the relationships that matter the most, it means that we never give up, that we will be willing to fight for them till the end, even if the other person isn't reciprocal, that we'll fight for them. I'm so grateful that my wife didn't give up on me. I mean, she had every opportunity early on in our relationship to say, you know what, this is not what I signed up for. When you and I made that commitment in front of God, in front of our family and our friends, this wasn't the commitment that I made. You didn't value the commitment as much as I did. And she could have simply just said, you know what, I'm throwing in the towel, I'm giving up. It's not worth fighting for. But she didn't. She was willing to fight for it, and she began to watch God work in my life and began to move me in a direction that took me less thinking about myself and more about him, putting my eyes more on who Jesus is. Again, so that I could go back to verse 12 and be compassionate, to be kind, and to show humility and gentleness and patience. She wasn't willing to give up. But culture says it's okay to give up. I mean, maybe with you, in the context of your relationships with your kids, you've had those conversations where your kid just wanted to say, I've had enough, I'm done. I mean, we've been there with both of our boys. I can remember when Caleb started high school. And my oldest, he plays baseball. He's been playing baseball for a long time. I don't know why he plays baseball, but he does play baseball. Okay, I love baseball. But when he got into high school, Caleb decided that just like junior high, he was going to run cross country and play baseball. The difference was in junior high, cross country was at a time that was easy for him to be able to practice and still focus on baseball. And then he got into high school. And I can remember the very first week of cross country practice. It started at 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. Now, let me put into perspective a day in the life of Caleb as a freshman. Dad had to get him up at 4 a.m. to drag him to school at 4:30 so that he could go run. And then after running anywhere between 5 to 10 miles, he would then go to class. And he would have class all day until like 2:10, 2:15. Then he'd get out of class, and then he'd have baseball at 2:45. That was high school baseball. And it would start at 2:45, and it typically went till 5 or dark, depending on which one came first. And then after that, he would come home, eat something real quick, and then go off to club practice and practice some more baseball. And then typically get home around 10 o'clock and then try to do his homework and then try to do it again all over. I remember at the end of the very first week of that, Caleb, it was on Friday. He didn't have baseball practice. He was so thankful. And he was out on the couch. I mean, you've had those moments where you sleep and there's nothing you can do to wake him up, right? I mean, an earthquake could have come. It could have had a tornado and it had blown our house away. Caleb still would have been sleeping on the couch. And on Saturday, when he finally decided to wake up, he comes to Tracy and I, he's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. All right, bud, what do you want to do? I want to quit running cross country. Why? And now this is a situation where I would say, I agree with you. You've put yourself in a position where it's actually harming you instead of helping you. So it's okay that you want to step away from this and focus on this. And I want you to see something here. Most of us have applied that principle and that ideal of life to every situation and circumstance within our life. Oh, I can't be in this relationship anymore because it's too hard. I have to think about the other person more than I think about myself. Yes, that's what makes relationships work. And so what we do is we take this approach that seems right in the moment, which it was for Caleb, and we apply it to every other situation, even when we know that it's not right. Because at the end of the day, what happens for you and for me is we're selfish. And so what we begin to fight for is myself and what I want and what I need and what I think I have to have. And I know what you're thinking. Well, that's what culture says. I was taught from a very early age that I should fight for what I want, what I need, what I have to have. But what happens is we're willing to hurt everybody else to get where we think that we want to be. And so we apply that in the context of relationships, and then we wonder why it doesn't work. And so I want to challenge you this morning, when it comes to your relationships, for that which is most important to you, fight for it. Don't give up. The second thing that he begins to show us here in Colossians 3 is to fight for your marriage, not in it. Let me explain that for you. Fight for your marriage, not in it. What we typically do, or at least what I do, is I fight about things that really don't matter. For example, let me explain to you. I have some OCD tendencies. A little extreme at times, my wife would tell you. I like a clean kitchen. I like a made bed in the morning when you get out of the bed. And I know for some of you, and this is my wife, we're so polar opposite. I think that's why God brought us together, and it seems to work. But for her, making the bed is simply taking the cover and just throwing it up. Bed's made, looks good. I'm going to get back in it tonight. Why should I actually take the time to make it? Me, on the other hand, when I get out of bed in the morning, I want to make it. I want it to be nice, neat, pristine, put the pillows just right. I know it sounds weird, right? But for those of you that make the bed, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't make the bed, you know what my wife's talking about. And so what will I do? I will pick a fight. Babe, just make the bed. How hard is it to make the bed? It's not that big of a deal, right? Just get up 5 minutes earlier and just make the bed. I mean, it seems logical to me, right? And it's not just with the bed. I mean, there's thing after thing after thing. I mean, when it comes to the kitchen, hey, just rinse the sink out after you rinse the plate. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that hard. And so I will fight on things that don't matter instead of fighting for my marriage and the things that do matter. Fighting for time with my wife to make sure that I will continue to date her even though we're married. Fighting for that within our schedule to say, this is time for you and for me, not anything else. Whatever the distractions are, whatever work you have to do, whatever I have to do, we're going to put that on pause, and it's just you and me. And so we don't fight for our marriage or our relationships. We fight in it. We look for a reason to pick a fight. And I know you'd say, no, I don't. Yes, you do. We all do. And listen to what Paul says there in verse, I'm jumping ahead. But look at what he says. Fight for your marriage, not in it. Focus on yourself and what needs to change in you before pointing out what needs to change about your spouse or the other person. Focus on yourself and what needs to change within you. And so for me, it's like, if you don't make the bed, that's okay. We don't have to fight about that. I'm not going to pick a fight just because you chose not to make the bed. I'll make the bed, and I'll be okay with that. Even if I'm the first one up, I'll still make sure that I go back behind you, and I'll make the bed, and I won't say a word. I won't worry about how you feel or what you think when it comes to it. I'll just make the bed. Because I have a problem, not her. She didn't get out of the bed on the wrong side. I did. So I have to focus on myself and what needs to change in me. And it's my likes or interests or dislikes or whatever it is that I have to begin to change because I love her so much and I value who she is. So focus on yourself and what needs to change in you before you focus on the other person. Try not to use the word you when you're arguing. Instead, focus more on the word I. You know, babe, you didn't make the bed this morning. What was wrong with you? You should have made the bed. It's not that hard. Make the bed. You. And she would have said, you should have picked up your clothes. It's not that hard. The hamper's right there by the bed. You could just throw it in. Instead of focusing and using the word you, instead, use the word I. I'm sorry I nag so much. I'm sorry I make a big deal about something that really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the bed's made or not. I'm sorry that I got to focus on what can change within me instead of trying to change them. When I do premarital counseling with couples, I say this all the time. If you think that you can go into the relationship or the marriage and change them, don't get married. If you do not like who they are, don't marry them. Because I've had couples sit in my office with me or sit at my home with me and say, man, I'm going to change him. I'm going to change her. They do this and I don't like it. And they do that and I don't like it. And I will change that. No, you won't. If you don't like who they are, don't marry them. Paul tells us also that we should guard your marriage. Guard your marriage. I mean, look at what he says there in verse 14. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. And over all these virtues, put on love. Guard your marriage. Put up the protections necessary to make sure that you're pure within the context of that relationship. So if you have an issue with pornography, let it come to light and put the guardrails around necessary to protect your marriage. If you flirt with somebody of the opposite sex at work, put up the guardrails necessary to protect your marriage. If you have conversations about your marriage with somebody of the opposite sex, stop. Put up guardrails about your marriage. Guard, protect your marriage. Nobody's going to protect it for you. Nobody. There's no Safe Lock or any other alarm company that's going to come into your life and say, I'm going to put an alarm on your life to protect you, to make sure that you're safe, that the thing that you value most will be protected. There's nobody that's going to do it. You have to do it. You have to guard your marriage. You have to bind everything together that you do with those that you love the most with love. Guard, protect it. Do whatever it takes to make sure that you honor that relationship. Above all other relationships, the Bible tells us that we're going to leave and cleave, that this relationship becomes priority over all other relationships. I tell couples in premarital counseling all the time, if you do not make this relationship a priority, it will fail. Because everybody else in your life will tell you how to run that relationship. And sometimes those who you think are your best friends, your allies, that have your best interest in mind, they'll say whatever it takes to see you fail. I don't know why that is, but I've seen it time and time again. Well, I went to so-and-so, and I thought they were going to help me, but they led me down this path that destroyed everything. You know why? Because most of the time, we tell people what we think they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. Did you hear that? We tell people what they think or what we think they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. Protect your relationships. Guard them. Put a fence around them. I mean, the things that we value the most, we protect them. Yesterday, we had a guy at our house that was replacing Caleb's phone because if you've got a teenager, they've broken their phone, right? Just me. Okay, I'm an irresponsible parent, I guess. But my son broke his phone. And so we had a guy come yesterday to replace his phone. And he began to ask me, hey, we do this service within our company that provides protection for other electronics besides just phones. What electronics do you value most in your house that you think you need protection for? Where did your mind race when I said that? Maybe it was the gaming console, the TV. Maybe it was the refrigerator, the stove, the dishwasher. I don't know. But he's like, we protect all of it. I just looked him straight in the face and said, I don't care. If they break, they break. My TV's broken before. My family went without a TV. Our microwave went out, and we went without a microwave. It doesn't matter. What matters to me are the relationships that which are most important to me. The relationship with the wife, the relationship with my kids. I'm going to guard those relationships. I want to protect those relationships because I value those relationships. So you got to guard your marriage. You've got to pursue your spouse. Pursue your spouse. Guys, never ever stop dating your wife. Just because you put a ring on the finger doesn't mean that it's smooth sailing from here on out. They still want you to pursue them. They still want you to take them on dates. They still want you, or they want to know that you love them and you care for them. Set time aside. I have to put it in my calendar because it's that important to me. And so when somebody asks me, hey, Pastor Cory, can you do this? No, I can't. I've already got an appointment at that time. Because otherwise, I know my tendencies. If it's not on my calendar, I'll be like, yeah, I can do that. Sure. Oh, yeah, dang, I forgot I had a date with my wife. Hey, Trace, you don't mind, do you? I'm sorry, I know we had this plan, but this other thing came up. I didn't put it on my calendar. I forgot about it. I know who I am. And so it's a priority for me. And there's something on her side because we have shared calendars that she can look at it and look to her week and say, I'm looking forward to that. He still loves me. He's pursuing me. I mean, I was doing everything that I could when we were dating to let her know how much I loved her. I mean, I was doing everything possible. The restaurants that we went to, and it wasn't a lot because I was a poor college student, but when we could, I made it nice. I wanted her to know that I cared for her, that I loved her, I valued her. 1 Peter 4:8, it says, above all, love each other deeply because love covers over a what? A multitude of sins. It covers over a multitude of sins. Love does. And she needs to know that I love her. That I love her with all that I am. And Paul, over here in Colossians, he's like, put on love. Bind everything together with love. Love. So you got to pursue your spouse. You got to pursue the relationships that matter the most to you. You got to pursue it. And then you've got to pray. You got to pray for your marriage, pray for your spouse, and you've got to pray for yourself. I mean, how many of us carve out time to intentionally say, God, I'm praying over my marriage, and this is what I want for my marriage. And Father, I'm praying for my wife or my husband or my boyfriend or my girlfriend or that future dream of having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'm praying for them. And I'm praying for myself that I will be the man that you want me to be. That I will lay down my life for her and that she would know how much I love her. How important the relationship is. You've got to pray. And if you're not praying for your marriage, if you're not praying for your relationships, why not? What's keeping you? Because again, everything else is fighting for those that you love the most. Everything else is fighting for them. But are you fighting for them? Are you building your relationships on Christ? Because if you're building them on Christ, then you're praying for your marriage or your relationships. You're praying for your friends, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, the future hopes of having one. And you're praying for yourself. You're committed to it. You know that you need it because it's the only thing that's going to allow you to be the person that God wants you to be for the people in your life that God's placed there. The people that matter the most. Listen to what Paul also said in Romans chapter 12. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patience in affliction, faithful in prayer. Yeah, love binds it all together. But you and I have to pray for that relationship, the ones that we value the most. And so again, let me ask you this question. What is it that you're fighting for? Because here's what I've discovered, is God is fighting for you. God is fighting for you. He's fighting to have a relationship with you. Why? So that all your other relationships will work. Listen to what I said. So that all your other relationships will work, not that they will be perfect, but that they'll work. What are you fighting for? Because I know that God is fighting for you. He's fighting for me. How do I know this? Because he sent his son Jesus to die on a cross for you and for me. That's a pretty big fight. That he was willing to send his son to die for you and for me so that we could have a relationship with him. I don't know where you are today. I don't know what your relationships look like. But I do know this. Jesus wants a relationship with you. He wants you to know that he's fighting for you. And because he's fighting for you, he wants you to fight for what's most important. And that's the people around you. It's your husband. It's your wife. It's your best friend. It's whoever you're doing life with. He's fighting for you so that you can fight for that. Will you pray with me?